All right, let's go start. Hey everyone, thanks for attending. Name is AJ. I've been a customer for 9 years now. We have two VMware employees. We have Dale. He's a VMware TAM for ARIA. So if there's any question that I can't answer, he will answer for me. And we have another VMware employee that I just met today. So I'm going to be showing VRA on how we use it. You can use VRA any automation you want, but now it's called VMware ARIA automation. So these are the few benefits that you can have. So it helps automate delivery of ID services, and then you can put in place personal and relevant policies to enforce the deployments. We're so used. If you're an infrastructure guy, you log into vSphere, right-click, copy to VM as a copy new VM from a template. With VRA, you don't have to do that, and then it gives you the delivery to accelerate the management and deployment of compute services and applications. I was going to show this live, but I'm glad I didn't because the internet's broken. And lesson learned from the previous one. So it also helps organizations to automate the deployment of multi-vendor infrastructures. So I'm not sure how much VM builds you guys do day to day, but this can help you automate a lot of those tasks. And the components for VRA is very simple. When 7 came out, it's different appliance for the orchestrator, different appliance for the automation piece. How many? Like 3 total, Dale, in the past?
Yeah, you could do 2.
Yeah. Now it's just 1 because the orchestrator is now built into the actual appliance. I highly suggest using the lifecycle manager because the lifecycle manager can do the health check, and if you're running load balancers, it can monitor all that, and the scale up option is there. And the certificate management is there as well. So first things first, when you log into VRA, I'm pretty sure some of you guys here use Workspace ONE. This is the main login screen. This is connected to the VMware Identity Manager, and you can sync it to your AD if you want. The main screen, what we're going to talk about here is what's the cloud assembly, the orchestrator, and what is the service broker. First thing, for the cloud assembly, you will have the deployments resources. The design is where you create your blueprint. The infrastructure is where you set up everything, and the service broker. So under the deployments is a screen of reports like how many VMs are deployed or what's being deployed. As you can see on the screen, I was building one, so it tells you, it gives you the status, and the expiration date is there. So I'm pretty sure some of your infrastructure has a VM that's actually used for testing. So some of the testing VMs stay there for a while. So now with VRA, you can put expiration. So let's say I want to test VM, and you want to set that test VM for only 2 weeks. So the resources is not going to be going to waste. So that actual resource is going to go back to your compute or storage. So here's another screenshot under resources. So what you see here are all the deployed VMs using VRA. So if you see the origin here, if you have VMs already deployed in the past, this is going to be called discovered. Right now, it's saying deployed. This was deployed to VRA. On this side right here are all the tags. So if you use vSphere taggings, or if you use Rubrik, don't work for Rubrik, but Rubrik we use tagging for backing up VMs. You can tag them as well in VRA. And as you can see on the left, on the VM, now this is still on VRA. There's already tasks that you can do here. So for example, you have an architect or a PMO. They don't need to go to the help desk to ask for adding disk, to reset or resize. They can do it in VRA. Here's another screenshot inside the resources folder. As you can see, there's a connect to remote console. So again, you don't have to give them vCenter access or vSphere access. And on the right side, what you have here is the actual history of how the VM was deployed. So it tells you who's the owner of the specific VM, who's the requester. So now it's not going to be you who's owning the VM. The actual PM or architect or whoever requested the VM is going to have its own record here. And then moving forward, as you can see, we have the connect to remote console. You can connect to the VM using the web. You don't need to download the client for the Windows installer. You can actually use it to connect to a VM. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast?
So what you're saying is you don't need to have the VMRC
No.
installed. It goes directly.
Yep. Here's another one that you can see on the resources. So all these inputs, I will show that later on the actual blueprint. Um, how fast can VRA build a VM? So as you can see here, I requested the VM build at 10:01. At 10:09, it's already built. So that's 8 minutes. You don't have to wait for it. It's going to finish it for it. It tells you if it's created, if it failed, or there's something else missing. So let's say you don't know how much compute you have, or the specific user that's requesting for a VM doesn't know there's enough resources. That VM build is going to fail. So the timestamps are there. It's going to tell you you don't have enough resources. So from there, they don't have to go to the help desk. Instead, they can look here. It's like, why is my VM not created yet? So from here, they can see, oh, there's not enough space anymore. And you can also request space using VRA. Then in the infrastructure, these are all the cloud account types. We're not running the latest and greatest version, but there's more cloud account types that you can add. So cloud account types are your vCenter, Azure if you're using it, or AWS. So right now, this is all the cloud accounts we have. We have 2 vCenters and 1 NSX. I know we're still in V, but we're in transitioning to T now. Projects. So what are projects used for? So the projects are used for defining where will the VM sit. It's also used for reporting. So let's say you have multiple departments, let's say accounting. So accounting wants their own specific umbrella, right? Now, let's say Ed and I work for accounting, and Dale works for, let's say, HR. So Dale is the HR IT person, and Ed and I are both accounting. So if we are on the accounting project, we can deploy the VMs just to the accounting piece. So the reporting is just for us, and then Dell can have its own, and it's separated. And as you can see here, we only have 3 projects. We have dev, so infrastructure is our dumping ground for any VMs, and also we do have VDIs. Now, what is the flavor mapping? The flavor mapping is the t-shirt sizing. So what you can do for flavor mapping is define how much CPU and how much memory you want to give to that specific build. It doesn't matter how much you want, but you can put it there. And then you can also map the images that you have in vSphere. That way, they don't have, again, it's up to how you guys want to use it, but this is how you map the images. If you don't want them using vCenter, map everything here. As you can see, we have multiple images. Networking is where you add the specific networks, network profiles. We're going to go through this later in the blueprint. As you can see, it tells you which vCenter or account or region it's on, and what network domain. And same thing, storage profile. Right now, we're just dumping everything in one storage, but with capability tags, you can define or put it on the drop-down. Let's say, I want to select a storage. I just don't want a dumping ground. You can also do that as well. Same thing, storage profiles. I'm just showing you how the storage profile is set up. And integrations. The good thing with VRA, it integrates with a lot of products. I'm not sure what IPAM you guys use, but we use Infoblox. So now instead of contacting the networking team, you can integrate Infoblox. So once you integrate it in Infoblox, it can reserve an IP for you. That's one step that you don't have to go to the networking team if you're using an IPAM. Any questions so far? If I'm going too fast, just let me know. So design. This is where you're going to be spending most of your time. This is where all the templates are, and this is where you're going to be doing your blueprints. Currently, we have this design, and this is the blueprint screen. I am not a programmer, so I'm an infrastructure guy. At first, I didn't like it, but when I started using it, immediately I fell in love. So as you can see on the top left, it's a totally empty canvas. And then the easy thing with VRA, everything on the left, you just drag. So once you drag a vSphere machine, this auto-populates for you. And then on the next screen, the YAML, it's what it's using. It's so easy to use that it actually auto-fills for you. So as you can see here, the top left, so what the properties is the image. So what type of image would you want to use for this specific blueprint? So I'm doing a hard code. I want this specific blueprint to use Windows 2019. So this is where the image profiles comes in. So when you were setting up the image profiles in infrastructure, you will define everything here. Flavor is the t-shirt sizing. Right now, we want that specific flavor. Then after that, you were going to have a working blueprint after dragging your networking. So it's not going to work without networking, so you have to drag a networking object. So once you have that, it's going to auto-populate the CloudSphere vSphere network here. Now, I know you're going to ask a question. What if I want to define a specific VLAN? You can. So on the tags, you can add constraints and also the capability tags. So that way, you can just put them on a specific VLAN, or you can also make it as a selection for input. So after testing that, you can see the test results is already successful. Once you click the provisioning diagram, it tells you everything on step by step. So there's a networking resource. As you see here, there's a constraint. We have this hard. You can do soft as well, and you can do selections. The machine allocation is the actual VM name, the VM name that VRA is going to give. I know what you're going to, that's a very long name, and that's not going to work, right? Easy thing is you can use custom naming. So as you can see here, I added an input called custom name, and I named the title VM name, and it's just a string. You're going to add that on the actual vSphere resources property. And now when you hit test, it's going to give you an option for a VM name. So you can do your custom name for the VM. You don't need the VRA to name it for you. Any questions so far? All right, we're good. Moving on. So our blueprint now looks like this. If you remember, we started with this small piece, and now we ended up with that. Now, VMware code has YAML codes that you can import here, and then you can just change the properties. Here, we already built it. So as you can see, we have different inputs, different properties, but again, there's only 2 objects there. So remember what I said about the application? So what if I want 2 VMs? I have a web application that I want load balance. In the blueprint, all you have to do is add 2 virtual machines and then add the NSX load balancer object. And as you can see on the right, it gives you 2 cloud vSphere machines and then the NSX load balancer. So this also cuts down extra configuration that you're doing manually. Do everything in the blueprint, and it can be self-service. So let's say someone wants to ask for a web app that's load balanced, you can do it here as well. So how I learned why I'm an infrastructure guy, how did I learn all this? VMware HOL is free. I highly suggest, if you're not using the HOL yet, go use it. And the VMTN community can help you if there's any questions. Everything is free. If you're not sure how to start, everything is here.
Anybody not use hands-on apps?
What? You don't use it?
No, I was just saying, like,
I haven't used it yet. I just used the client's interface.
Yeah, another thing that I highly suggest, I'm not sure if you've heard of the VMware Odyssey. The VMware Odyssey is like real life, where you actually have to complete a task in order for you to proceed to the next one. Not like the interactive labs, it gives you step by step, but the actual Odyssey is like a test. So let's say they're gonna ask you to set this up, and then in order for you to proceed, you gotta finish this step first. Highly suggested. So the service broker, this is where this is gonna be your self-service portal. As you can see, this is what we have. So imagine there's an IT person in accounting, doesn't have to go to the service desk anymore. You can just have them go to the service portal. You can do simple tasks such as add disk. I want to create a snapshot. I'm doing something on my VM, so I can revert back. Also, since it's integrating to Active Directory, you can also do disable the user if you want. Upgrade virtual machines VM tools. So this empowers your users instead of you being the bottleneck of all this. Now, these are just an example for the orchestration pieces that VRA can offer. You have to remember, VRA is not just for automating VM builds. It can actually do a lot more than that. So as you can see, we have a Red Hat item here, and Windows database, Windows Server. So I highly suggest also following Dale's website, vCrocs. He has a very good document about Windows database servers. He just posted it like last week, right?
Yeah, that was with creating the drives and stuff.
Yep. So again, with SQL comes with different drives. So instead of you putting it as a golden image, I will give Dale's links here for the actual documentation. So here are some more orchestration pieces that you can use. As you can see, this is just 200 of many items, but if you keep scrolling down, it's more than 600. Everything is out of the box. And if you remember that blueprint that we have on the form, this is how it's going to look like. So remember the project. So if you're only in infrastructure, you can only see infrastructure. If the project is accounting, select accounting, the description, the work order number if you have, the DR tag, and the selection for OS. It's going to be an input now instead of just being 2019. The VM creator, your tier tag, department name, host name, again, this is fully customizable. And then if you have a folder that you want it to go to, create a folder name, or you can hard code that as well. When I say customizable, so let's say not everyone is very savvy with IT. So let's say, what is a DR tag? So you can add a signpost help. If not sure, please contact the server team, and then on that form, they can have that information there. Any questions? I know I went too fast, but any questions? Go ahead.
The number one question I have on this is, haven't talked about permissions and security.
Yes, that's fine. So the permission and security is handled by the VIDM. So you give the, I wish I had live because, hold on. So the permission for VRA is done inside VRA. So you sync the users to VIDM, which is the identity manager, the first login screen that you see. And then the permission you do is inside VRA. So you manage VRA. Let's say I'm the VRA admin. I give you access to VRA. I only give you specific access. I'm not going if you're just a user, I'm not going to give you access to the infrastructure, but only give you access to the service broker and any resources that you publish. Does that answer your question?
Unfortunately, no.
No, that's
I
fine.
think the problem's going to be, again, from our company standpoint, it looks like what you're doing is you're giving the customers and users a lot more accounts, and the problem is the silos. For having customers create their own systems, yes, we do have a template in there. So is right now we have a whole series of roles, and if you're in roles, you have permissions. So, for example, would be is, can I connect to the console? Not everybody can connect to our consoles. Hey, I want to add a disk. Well, unless you're in provisioning, you can't add a disk. You can't expand a disk. So it sounds like this is great to one aspect of it, or helping possibly certain teams, such as a server tech support team, but it's not going to be functionable for all the other ones. That's the reason I have security, because compliance is another issue we have to deal with also. Would I be correct?
You can
Am I
handle
articulating that?
entitlements. You can handle all those type of permissions inside the entitlements per blueprint, per project. You can give entitlements to which functionality you want the users to use. So if you don't want them to be able to expand disk,
Yep.
take that entitlement away, they won't even have the option.
That is correct. So this is specific options that we have. Hold on a minute.
So you can there's many layers.
Well, again, I think I get the point you're shining there. However, the point is to be, from our standpoint, is we only allow certain people to do certain things, and they're all accounted by AD. So I guess I'm looking at how I can.
Projects then. You have separate projects, you have administrative type projects, your user type projects.
Yeah, but again, that goes back to the groups. So usually someone's on the server team is in that project, that's their job. If someone's on the network, that's their job. If there's someone in security, that's their job. Now, granted, on the infrastructure, on the VMware side of things, I control everything in there as to, and that's where I sit down and say, who gets what, grant what permissions, and that's where the handover is. So, because I'm looking at automation and trying to figure out how we can better automate and do things. And that's kind of where we're working right now, trying to get vRealizer and get all those components installed.
Okay.
Again, I'm
No,
just asking, that's all.
It's fine.
That's all I was here for, just to look and see how the certain things.
Yeah, Dale might have a better input.
With what I hear you saying, yeah, it's like AJ said, you can have the projects, which kind of keeps your VMs separated, and then within the projects, if you don't want users, to add disks or take snapshots or any of that kind of day two functionality, you could disable that. And if AJ and I are on the same team and he's allowed to do certain things and I can't, you can set the permissions that he can and I can't. Everything you're describing, I'm pretty sure you can do it inside of there.
I guess I'm gonna have to take a look along the line, because you guys keep talking about project, I'm talking about production.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A project is what separates all your VMs. So if it's, like if AJ is part of one project and I'm part of another, he has a VM called ABC. I have one that's called 123.
Right.
When he signs in, he only sees his VMs. When I sign in, I only see what is in my projects. So I don't even know that he's doing any creations or anything.
Like the highest,
term projects.
Yeah, it's like the
It's really
highest-
not projects.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
again, what's confusing me. You keep saying project, something else.
It's called the project is just a way to group a team together. A project could be called, like he talked about, an HR project.
Mhm.
Right.
If I'm part of HR, then when I sign into VRA, I only see HR. I don't even see that there's other projects.
Yeah, so you can add them as a member, so that means they can do anything, and then there's also administrators.
Right.
Yep.
It's pretty much
I
like
get this concept, and, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's pretty much like an OU then, like
Yeah.
project is like an OU.
Right.
If you look
Mhm.
at it as an AD. Yeah. And then within the projects, as you said, like OU, you can give the permission to that project to be an AD OU. So anybody, as soon as you add a new person to that OU,
Right.
or a group within AD, then they would
They have
automatically,
access to it, stuff again.
they would automatically
Like I
have.
said, I get the concept, but unfortunately, I'm thinking this will not be able to be applied in our environment, based off what all the stuff you're talking about. Because all our servers are opened up, it's across the stuff in there, so, don't have those kind of grouping, as you're saying. You know what, let me play, I'm gonna have to take a look a little deeper into this stuff.
You don't have to have, you could have single project if you want. You don't have to have multiple projects.
it's your first fork of separating your users. It's like if you want to have user A, user B, your first level of that would come in the project level. That's your highest level. So if you want a user to be able to see something,
Right.
you give them an assignment to that project. If you don't want them to see it, you don't assign it to that project. You can have multiple projects, multiple users, and then within those projects, you can have different entitlements per. So you have a lot of functionality there.
A big use case that I see with people using VRA is to get people out of vSAN. So, right now, a lot of businesses over the years, if you're creating VMs and stuff, it's like, oh, they need access to vCenter. Well, security teams are clamping down on that more and more
Correct.
by setting the permissions in VRA and separating your VMs and what they can do as far as day two. Makes it that you don't have to give people VRA or vCenter access anymore.
And with that, you have a lot of those, because I'm looking at it from the service desk side, getting it out of infrastructure, and let service desk start taking some of those responsibilities, pushing stuff out. Do you have a lot of those, not necessarily projects, but those plugins so that by default, we don't have to develop them, we can just like pull them in? Sorry, I was late, so I missed.
No, it's okay. So I think what you're asking is, can you add more simple task in here, correct? Or no, for the service desk to use?
Yes, we'll create a task,
Mm-hmm.
but do you have a lot of predefined stuff so that we don't have to create from scratch?
Correct, there is.
Okay.
So the orchestrator has a lot of workflows you can use here. So again, this is just 200 of many items. So give me an example of tasks that you're trying to do.
Just say if they had to create a VM.
Yes. So basically, creating a VM is one of the blueprints that we created. So as you can see from this, they can create the VM in here. So this is our Windows Server tile. So they can request the VM from here, let's say the service desk. Now, let's say the service desk, you only have one project, which is infrastructure, all your server production projects, right? They fill this form, it generates the request and creates the VM for them. Yep,
You can go a step further and get a ServiceNow plugin.
that's correct.
I didn't want to get too
Yeah,
far into that.
that's another integration. You can integrate it with ServiceNow. So in my previous job, we were in the process of integrating ServiceNow. You can have ServiceNow as your front end or the service broker as the front end. You can do either. There's a lot of stuff that you can integrate with VRA. That's why this is just one of the basic one that we put. It's like a 45-minute, but we can definitely dig deeper in VRA, what else it can do. We're already planning on showing how Infoblox integrates. So ServiceNow is a good one too. So, yep,
If there's not a workflow to do what you want, do it script.
yep,
I mean, if the product that you're trying to integrate with has API calls or like a PowerShell module or anything like that, you can create a day two catalog item to just about anything.
and also I'm pretty sure we all know server retirement. It depends how it's being retired. You can create a server retirement process here. So let's say someone requests a server retirement here. They put the VM name. There's multiple tasks. The first task is to email the user this is going to be retired. Once that's met, it's going to disconnect the NIC. Now, once the NIC is disconnected, let's say 2 days or 3 days, you can remove it from the backup. So everything can be automated here as well for server retirements. I'm not sure how you deal with server retirements, but that can be automated as well using VRA.
And some of the integrations, like he said about Infoblox, when you use the integrations from VRA, when you do a decom and you delete your deployment, it'll actually reach out to those products and clean it up for you.
Correct. Any other questions?
I have a question, but you can hold off
Yeah.
until later if you feel it's necessary, around the IDs. Have they gotten a little bit more flexible around that? Because like, even with the image mappings,
Mhm.
if you update a template, it drops the ID. If the ID gets dropped, it loses the mapping. That's like a common thing I see every customer runs into. So, and it's not just ID scenario, there's a lot of ID scenarios. So I guess, are they getting a little bit more flexible around that, or?
So that's a very good question because you ran into that issue. So if you update the template and you don't update the name of the template, there is a job that runs every night to update that. But you can always push it right now. So let's say you updated a template. You tell me, oh, I updated the template. Can you make sure this is synced? If you did not change the name of the actual template in vSphere and then just do a sync for images, it's going to grab that.
Okay, so they did fix the ID.
Yes. Yep. But again, if they did not change the name of the template. Yep.
Fine with me.
Yeah.
Isn't that what like Sysprep does though, right? Like if you
No. I think he's talking about something different than what you were also talking about. So I think there is an option. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dale.
have a screenshot of it, don't you, where you're showing the
I think they're asking about the content sync. I mean the image sync. Let me just make sure that.
Well, the image sync will actually, it identifies the machine as a different machine because it has a new ID, even if the name's the same, in the past,
Oh,
that would break it.
okay. So how we fix that is we use guest OS customization. So that way, I think I know what you're talking about now. I'm sorry, I didn't get that at first. So, and now I know what you're talking about as well. So we fixed that by using the guest OS customization. So in our blueprint, if I can show you, hold on a moment. So the customization spec, so we have a customization spec for VMs. On that customization spec, we set it to not use that ID that you're talking about, to generate a new ID. I can show that to you live if you want. You can, we can talk more about it, but I think I know what you're talking about because we ran into that issue.
Talk later. I
Yeah.
don't wanna-
Yeah, that's fine. But it's a very good question.
Well, the IDs come from vCenter,
Yep.
and they get tracked in VRA.
Yep.
If they don't line up,
It's gonna.
it's gonna
Are you
break.
talking about like if you have a master template in vCenter and you
Yeah,
update it?
and you hit
So,
sync
so if you take
images.
if you take a master template and you turn it back into a VM, do you remotely patch it and turn that into a template again, it gets a new ID.
No, that's allowable.
Yeah,
It's
that's
when,
what-
it's
yeah,
when,
That's what I'm thinking of.
typically, I tell all customers, do that method. But you know what happens? They don't. They replace them. And as soon as they replace them, it starts the chain of events. But even if they call them the same name, because they're getting the image, a lot of times they're different teams building these templates. So they're not updating them, they're replacing them. And when a replace happens, it generates a new ID. And then it doesn't align up with VRA. And then when you do the same, you gotta remap it.
Right, you have to go into that one screen that he's showing.
You gotta remap it. And
It's,
every customer doesn't, they
You
go,
know,
it's free.
if you call your template like Windows 2019, you have to go in and select the new version that was created.
Yeah.
Or if you go to do a build, it'll fail because it can't find the old template.
Yeah, and even if they're the same name, same
Right.
place, same
Yes.
everything could look exactly right, but because it has that different ID,
Yes,
it
it's
doesn't.
different UUID underneath the hood that it's looking for, and that's changing.
So that would be, I was kind of crossing my fingers if they worked on that one, but there's ID issues all over, things like that, but that's very common. But
The one thing I was hoping that they would do there, and I don't know if it's there yet, is if you could just do like an API call and say, here's my, when you create that new master template, grab that ID and just do an API call so that
Yeah,
it replaces it.
that would be great. Maybe you can do that.
I don't know if they have that feature there yet or not.
But we can talk more about it. I'm very interested with that. Yeah.
If you all your image mappings through an API call, you could grab that ID and then replace it through a little bit of code. Just like your way to do it.
it's the ID in VRA that needs to be updated.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You have to make a call to VRA and say, here's my new ID for this master.
There's always a way, right?
Right.
There's always a way to do something, but talk later, I don't wanna.
No, it's okay. Any other questions? You guys hungry?
One thing he didn't talk about is everything that he does is on-prem.
Mhm.
Is you can also use VRA to do cloud native VMs in Azure or AWS or Google or wherever. So you can use the same tool and the same, a lot of the same YAML code and everything to create VMs in the cloud just as easy as on-prem.
Terraform, you can integrate if you use Terraform.
So when they talk about the whole multi-cloud, that single tool can create VMs no matter where you want. And they can be cloud native.
Yeah.
On VMC, on AWS, no matter.
Multiple data centers all over the
Right,
place.
no matter where you want to build them, you can connect this to those resources to build.
One single interface,
Yep.
Yeah. And you can also use it as a DR as a service. Let's say you want to build a VM with SRM. You can also add that here, program that here. So it's endless. And again, go
I
ahead.
had a question I thought of doing. Those tags on the right,
Hmm.
were you implying that they were built in VRA or pulled in from vCenter or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure. if
And then
it's like,
you can also add a property here on the blueprint. So let's say you want to have a new tag in vSphere. You can do that here as well. But yes, great question. Any other questions? Good. Ed?